Something that struck me, like, from a bit of history, right? So there's a really good story about King Robert the Bruce, who's like a historical Scottish king, where there was like an enemy knight charged at him at the Battle of Bannockburn, and Bruce was able to dodge out of the way of his lance. So the other knight was mounted and had a lance, so he charged directly at Bruce, and Bruce wheeled his horse out of the way such that the man came past him, and with one blow with his battle axe brought it down on the man's head, brought it clean through his plate helmet, and killed him underneath it. And I think the strength required to just break a human skull, let alone a plate helmet with a battle axe, must have been tremendous.
I think if you hit with the right force, the plate helmet actually makes things easier, potentially. Because you've got a big load of steel to rattle around in.
Just how physically strong you would have to be to do what Talion is running around doing with no effort. I mean, he's a character in a video game, so, like, fair enough. But
I always wonder about this, not like in a psychopath way, but about, the force you need to drive a sword through, like, bone, through a skull, as you say. Caving in a skull with something blunt is one thing, but to, like, full-on cave them in. Or, like, to stick a sword in and have it come out the other side.
Oh, we're getting some orc politics.
Yeah, this is... Well, you'll see.
Come close if you want the black hand. Those slave scum are pouring poison in your ear. Oh, but you cut these ropes. Ratbag will tell you everything.
I bet he won't, though.
He will with some spooky torturing.
You know that all these other dead orcs did.
Go ahead, you bastard! Do it! I'll die.
It's kind of weird seeing orcs say bastard.
It feels like a very modern... Well, not modern, but, like, not a Middle-earth word.
Which is hilarious, because it's a very, like, classic, like, medieval English thing, certainly, as both a word and an insult. But I think it's just because Tolkien's generally pretty PG. It's interesting, so, right, we're going to talk about this a hell of a lot more, I suspect, over this recording, and I want to date it at this point. As of today, the first trailer for Amazon Prime's The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, comes out tomorrow. So we know very little about it, and I want to preface with that. But I was reading a thing with them about their kind of thoughts about it, and basically, they said, quite interestingly, they wanted to avoid it being Game of Thrones, but Tolkien, because they basically said there's two things that we see in Tolkien's work. Firstly, for what it is, Tolkien's work is pretty PG. We found his weaknesses, wonderful, and we found his strengths. Tolkien's work is fairly PG, and the core theme of Tolkien's work is generally positive about, hope and the power of evil. Whereas, like, stuff like, your Game of Thrones and your witches are more sex, violence, and people are generally dicks.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and I like that they're sticking to... I don't know, as much as Tolkien's work is incredibly violent, tens of thousands are killed, like many, many people and orcs die, and racially uncomfortable and all that jazz, but yeah, I think that's a nice narrative through line, that this isn't going to be about people fucking and, like, executing and betraying one another, because that's not really what Lord of the Rings is, or should be. He actually, like, in this same interview that I keep referencing, they confront him about, like, so this is maybe like hardcore journalism in 1964 when the interview was, but the BBC journalist says, yeah, there's no sex in your novels. What's that about? and Tolkien talks about how there was a particularly negative reviewer who said that it sounds like Lord of the Rings was written by a man who never got past puberty. Which I don't think is entirely without merit.
Yeah,
really.
It's not fully fair, but also there's something to it.
Yeah, I thought it was incredible that, like, this interviewer in 1964, like, has quite a socially nuanced view of Lord of the Rings. So, like, obviously, there's no women in Lord of the Rings.
That's a key part of it. You need female characters to have sex scenes.
Yeah, but this guy, like, correctly pointed out, is like the only character who has any sexual agency at all is Éowyn.
Yeah,
and like she's almost immediately punished.
Yeah, and she spends the entire books in the fucking friend zone. So
yeah, well, not even that. Like, she fights an ancient shadow demon who, like, lays her low until Aragorn comes back and basically forgives / heals her, which isn't great either.
Yeah.
But anyway, like, Tolkien's response. This is the reviewer who said, like, oh yeah, it was written by a man who obviously never got past puberty. Like, Tolkien's response to the interview is fucking hilarious, because he's like, I've got grandchildren. Like, I've got children. I've been married for like 40 years. Basically, like, the older English equivalent of, like, I'm getting laid quite enough, thank you.
It's a bit of that, and it's got slight hints of, I have a girlfriend, you don't know her, she goes to another school.
Yeah, but like he actually says in the interview, like apparently the reviewer who gave him this like criticism, his exact words before he points out that he's got married with children is, "I don't think this man has children." Basically, like, has this guy gotten laid? No, didn't think so. It's a very strange response. I get the feeling from watching him. I'd never heard Tolkien's voice before. Like I'd never actually.
Yeah, I was gonna say this was an actual like physical interview, wasn't it? As in you weren't just reading the text of this. This was like a radio or film thing, wasn't it? I assume it's radio.
I assume it was radio. Like there wasn't any video to go along with it. There was like a couple of images of Tolkien over the YouTube video, but like it wasn't recorded footage. I recommend it viewership. Like it's really, if you like Lord of the Rings, this is another thing you can listen to on a long walk or like
Sprite,
shopping
who's
or
editing this, drop me a marker, let me know, and I'll put a link in the comment in the description for it.
But it was fascinating. But Tolkien is obviously deeply, deeply uncomfortable being interviewed, and he's terrible. He's a terrible interview subject.
Yeah.
Like he digresses. He very rarely actually answers
Yeah, point me
the
an
question.
academic who isn't, frankly.
Yeah, and I think it does speak to the fact that we do have to remember this man's principally an academic who also just happened to write the greatest work of fantasy in the English language.
He would be the first one to say he's an academic, but definitely not an author.
That's the final question this interviewer asks him. He says, like, so what would you like to be remembered for? You know, your academic work, or would you like to be remembered for Lord of the Rings? And Tolkien says, I don't think I've got any choice in the matter. I think I'm going to be remembered for Lord of the Rings. So I think this interview was in 1964. Tolkien was in his 70s by then. I think he dies maybe 5 or 6 years after the interview takes place.
Yeah.
But Lord of the Rings had been out for at least a decade, and Tolkien admits in the interview that he was receiving dozens of like pieces of correspondence every week about Lord of the Rings, even a decade after it was like done. So like this was a sensation even within his own lifetime, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, because I know he did a translation of Beowulf. I know.
He did. I always wanted to read it. Like, I like the story of Beowulf because I love Vikings. Vikings are great.
How much do you know about the background of the manuscript of Beowulf? I think
I know it's one of like the oldest texts that we
But also, I think of it as being like a well-known thing. There's one copy of it, which has been nearly lost in a fire several times. We only know it from one manuscript.
Are you fucking kidding me? That's wild.
Look it up while we're on this recording and talk a little bit more about it. But yeah, it was stuck to basically a manuscript of one of the apocryphal books of the Bible, like the Gospel of some other disciple, and it was just a few pages in the back, and that's literally the only copy of it we have as a work. Whereas it's considered like a defining work of medieval literature, and yet we know we almost lost it several times.
I know that, like, in the university we went to, Doctor, the University of Glasgow, like, they have a special collections section of the library, which is, like, books that there might only be one or two of these ever, and it's in, like, a vault at the top of the library building, which is just so cool that's
most, like, big university libraries have something on that, like, a kind of special collection stuff, where if you actually look into it, it's wild the kind of shit they tend to have in there. Of, like, how rare and, like, important and unique some of the shit is. Oh, no, fuck. Oh, I fucked up. Man,
run,
Jesus
flee,
Christ.
flee!
Yep, nope, I'm just gonna fail this mission. Well, the mission here was to, search for Goroth without raising the alarm, and we fucked that up. Try that again.
Is it going to do that thing where it kills us?
No, I think it's because it's a mission objective. That's a bit different.
All right, I'm going to leave the stealthing to you, Doctor. I'm not a subtle man.
Yeah, let's slit this guy. I'm learning the importance of really staying in stealth in this, because, like, as soon as you leave it, I'm like, I'll leave stealth to kill this one man, and then I'll go back into stealth. No, you fucking won't. Right, that's the bell.
How do you feel about stealth games in general?
They've changed a lot. Certainly, you look back to 10 years ago. Yeah, probably slightly older, more like 15. Stealth games were quite difficult in their stealth. I feel like stealth in modern games has become quite easy. As part of that, I now enjoy stealth in games a lot more than I used to. Because a lot of stealth can just... Oh, shit ass. A lot of stealth can just be punishing in games.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of now more modern games make stealth... Like, take the Batman games as an example. Like, stealth's fairly easy in those games.
Easy but cool.
Yeah.
Like, stringing up Joker henchmen from gargoyles and stuff was just great.
Oh shit! As you say, you want to feel powerful in a game. You're not playing these games to feel like an idiot who doesn't know what he's doing. So it's like, yes, it makes sense that you're playing as Batman who's got all this fucking shit, so stealth should come fairly naturally to him, so it shouldn't be a problem that you, the player, are struggling with.
Yes, I concur. I remember one of the very earliest games I ever played was the original Tom Clancy Splinter
Those
Cell,
are hard.
which was punishingly
Yeah.
difficult. Like to the point where like there was so many core mechanics that were just never explained to you, or gadgets that like the game just never told you how to use, and guards could see you from like ridiculous like distances away, and yeah.
And
I mean, it's
as
still-
a kid, I always just found stealth games just like deeply stressful because of that.
oh yeah, I still do.
Yeah. Whereas a lot of modern ones, like certainly modern Assassin's Creed ones, they're not really stealth games in that sense, but that's no bad thing for me.
Please tell me that this game, like something I really dislike in modern gaming, is crafting systems. I hate crafting. I can't stand it.
That doesn't bother me hugely, but I have no idea if this game has one or not.
It's just I don't really want to spend hours and hours trekking across the overworld looking for duct tape or metal fragments.
See, yeah, I think that's
or orc bollocks or whatever.
I think that's come from the what I can only describe. Oh no, shit! It's what I can only describe as the RPGification of games. Like this game may not have crafting, but it's got a tech tree and stuff like that, which would be almost unheard of in a non-RPG game until pretty recently.
Yeah.
And stealth back into the shadows.
I think you did. You're getting to grips with the combat here, Doctor. That was very
Well,
impressive.
that's the alarm I was trying to stop everyone from raising, and frankly, I'm stunned that we did that.
And then this bastard's gonna walk around there like, oh, it must have been the wind.
At first, he looked like a slave, so.
Ah, yes, the wind killed all of my friends. Hang on, can we do something with that grate?
Don't think so.
Oh, okay. Can we check? I'm just curious.
Oh yeah, we can slide in. You're right.
Oh, look at that. You're welcome, Doctor. It doesn't seem to represent any tactical advantage, though. Oh, there's these things. Are these
Caragors
dinosaur
or whatever. Well,
orcs?
I don't think I want to go down there. That seems like a lot of bullshit. Now I've used my assassin vision. Sorry, detective vision. Sorry, wraith world vision. There we go. Generic Unreal Engine 3 third-person action adventure vision.
It still blows my mind, like, because Unreal Tournament, which is where the Unreal Engine comes from,
It's a whole
was-
load different to this. That's it's like Quake kind of thing, isn't
Yeah.
it? Basically.
It's like it was an arena shooter. I played
Yeah.
one of the Unreal Championships, but like the engine seems to be
Oh,
the basis
shit!
for.
That's not the
Whoa!
guy I was intending to drop down on at all. But that. Right, let's just try again. I thought I was going to do that onto the captain, but apparently I was aiming at someone wildly different.
Now, is this the captain who has a weakness for Caragors?
Let's remind ourselves. Sauron's army. If he seems like he has a strength of it, because he's called Goroth Caragor Tamer. So he is vulnerable to mounted beasts. Oh, he does have a fear of Caragors. Well, he chose. Boy, did he choose the
he's
wrong
terrible at-
profession. God.
This right here is why Sauron's army is defeated, right? Like, this is just poor management.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Let's get this guy. Well, this guy who has a deathly fear of Caragors, and we'll give him the role of Caragor Tamer. Come on.
This is like, I've got a horrible fear of numbers. What role should we assign this guy in like, our grand bureaucracy of Mordor? Oh yeah, we'll make him a fucking accountant. Jesus, this is just bad management. Sauron brings some of this on himself.
Well, there we go.
You're more skilled in the Elder Days than I am, Doctor. Like, why does Sauron do what he does? Because certainly in The Lord of the Rings, it's never really explained why he wants to do any of this. Like, he's evil. Is the only explanation we
so
get.
first off, the important thing to remember is Tolkien doesn't care about that. Tolkien can say this guy is evil because he's evil, and he doesn't care about diving into it any more than that. And it's an interesting comparison to, so one of the things that hugely influenced Tolkien is Richard Wagner's Ring cycle and the stories that in turn draws from. Wagner goes out of his way to show you why the Ring is evil. The Ring in Wagner's work is evil because basically... have you ever watched any of like Wagner's Ring stuff?
I have not, no.
We should watch it at some point, though. You can't get drunk and watch it because it's all in German. So you need to be reading those subtitles.
I know who Wagner is. Like, is Wagner's Ring an opera?
Yes, a huge four-part opera, each of which is about 5 hours long. It is gigantic. But it essentially... It's more overtly Norse than a lot of Lord of the Ringsy kind of stuff, but basically, so it has the ring, and the ring is evil and corrupts you like a giant. So in Wagner's Ring, the role that ends up being played by Smeagol and Deagol is two giants called Fasolt and Fafnir, who find the ring, and Fafnir wants the ring, so he kills his brother for it, but then he gets the ring, uses the ring to amass a pile of treasure, curls up on that treasure, and becomes a dragon. Is
very, very German.
Yes, but he's where Smeagol comes from, is Fafnir. I've gone on a bit of a divergent point though here. The ring.
Why does Sauron do what he does?
Yes, so the ring in Wagner's story is evil because basically, essentially, there's a dwarf that wants to get laid. And he's been tempted by the Rhine Maidens, and they're kind of saying to apparently this guy's Goroth, whatever, we got bad intel from Ratbag. But yeah, he gets taunted by these Rhine Maidens who are like, oh, you're an ugly dwarf, we'll never sleep with you. And then one of them like flippantly says, and he's trying to get their gold off them as well, and they're like, oh yeah, we'll give you your gold, but you're a fucking lusty dwarf. If you want the gold, what you've got to do is forsake love. And unexpectedly to them, he goes, yeah, alright then. Oh, we've got a Caragor on him, so he's got the fear. But yeah, they ask him to forsake love. He says, alright then, give me your gold and I'll forsake love forever. And takes their gold, having forsaken love. He then uses that gold to forge the ring. And this is why the ring and everything that comes from it is evil, because they were made with gold and by a man who had fully forsaken love in order to do it.
Oh, okay. So we assume then, insofar as Wagner's ring is a prototype for the Lord of the Rings, that Sauron
There's
has done
something like
the
that,
same?
but in Tolkien's own work, so Melkor is evil because it's a very complicated thing of why Melkor, who becomes Morgoth, first turns against Eru Ilúvatar. That's a whole thing of, he wanted to sing his own music rather than just singing God's music.
We should do like a glossary of terms here, guys. So
Yeah.
Melkor slash Morgoth was the Dark Lord before Sauron, and Sauron was the chief of his servants,
Yes.
and the only one to survive the eventual war that the elves waged against Morgoth.
Yeah.
So, obviously, anyone who's Lord of the Rings knows the expression "a Balrog of Morgoth." That's who they're talking about.
Yeah. He was the apocalyptic level, the devil, essentially, the actual devil, and Sauron was one of his lieutenants.
It's a strange, again, another strange facet of Lord of the Rings that, we see Middle-earth at an age of great decline, where, lots of the gods and heroes who are running around are either dead or they're unwilling or unable to act, and, this is the kind of the dregs of this.
Yeah,
epic
and it's
story
overtly
that we
said
see
that it's
play out.
basically it's the autumn of the elves as well, and they're basically deciding as the elves leave, who's gonna take over.
Which is deeply, it's very saddening in a way for a story where the fundamental message is that good triumphs over evil. It's a very sad message.
Well, it's the thing of, I think it's like a lot of Viking stuff. A lot of it is the message of renewal. Think about the story of Ragnarok. A key part of Viking mythology is the battle in which their gods die and the world is destroyed. Yeah. It's a lot of that stuff, and it's a fundamental part of Norse mythology, and it's similar in Lord of the Rings of how. Of you need death and destruction for renewal and new life to happen.
I think that's a good narrative through line. I think it's one that Tolkien himself would have denied. Because in this interview that I keep referencing, which we've linked, I believe, viewership, please go watch it, but it's fascinating. But they actually ask him, the interviewer says, so when we see your characters in the Third Age of Middle-earth, everything is in decline, these great civilizations are on their last legs, all the magic is seeping out of the world. Do you see that as an allegory for what is happening now in the 20th century? And Tolkien says, oh, no, of course not, I don't believe in allegory. And you're like, that's not a very
the man who wrote the most
J.R.R.
heavy-handed allegory for the Industrial Revolution ever in the whole Isengard thing.
Yeah. He actually says the words in this interview, which it's not a surprise, because anyone who studies Tolkien for any length of time knows that he hates symbolism, he hates allegory, he hates metaphor, but he says the words in this interview, he's like, I don't use allegory. And I was like,
you may not like it, but you absolutely fucking use it. Yeah.
Yeah, to his credit, this interviewer, I can only give him, I can't give him enough credit is what I ought to say, because he obviously knows his shit. He's heavily researched Lord of the Rings, and either he is a fan or he's a good journalist who has done an overwhelming amount of research before he met with Professor Tolkien.
Oh my god, this game has appendices. They've gone full Tolkien.
Oh my god. What the... On that note, would you mind if we call a brief break, Doctor?
I was going to say, I need to refill the Emperor.
We'll tell you what the Emperor is next time, viewership. But for now, we hope you're enjoying this content. If you are, remember to like, share, subscribe. We've done a lot of research to try and give you fresh Lord of the Rings conversation. We'd love to see that reflected with loads and loads of views. But we'll see you very, very soon while Doctor and I refill and rebev.
Sounds good.